Beautiful. Nothing like some breaking news on a day where we've got the show going here for the folks. And the Chicago Bears have made a decision. It's not at the head coaching ranks, but they have decided to move off of a coaching staff member, that, of course, being offensive coordinator Shane Waldron, not even a year into his tenure with Caleb Williams. That slew of receivers, the offensive promise that was Chicago just a couple months ago, now is going back to figuring it out with a different member of the staff. I don't know, Mark. Have they announced who's going to take over play calling duties in his stead?
Yeah, they have. I can't remember his name. He's the guy, younger coach who was with the Rams. Then he took over for Frank Reich. He was the offensive coordinator in the Panthers when Frank Reich was like fired himself, and then Dan Brown or Smith, a very generic name. I'll have to look back up.
No worries. Obviously, the big headline of the day is that they are making a move, so to speak. After
Thomas Brown.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, after several strange encounters with the media, for Matt Eberflus, I must say he has not been the best when it's come to kind of handling the rain of fire that is Chicago media. I've watched a lot of 670 The Score stuff. I've seen, David Kaplan going off on him while they had him on the show because his phone wasn't working and it was cutting out. Just a lot of nonsense, but they do get a move done. Are you happy about it? Are you more like this is just saving face for what the inevitable is, which is, having the majority of the staff out, including the head coach?
It's more just like, if you're not a Bears fan, like if you watch this show and you're someone who enjoys, just NFL football, or you're, a diehard Cardinals fan or whatever, but you listen to Dan and I, maybe you're not in the sphere that I am. It seems pretty obvious if you're a Bears fan, like you're consuming the media. For me, ESPN 1000, for other people, 670 Score, pardon my take, and everything that Barstool Big Cat and a lot of the Barstool Chicago guys talk about endlessly as well. I don't feel the need to regurgitate all of that. I don't want to regurgitate all of that because you're hearing that elsewhere. If you are, if you're listening, if you're a Chicago sports fan, you're consuming it. I will say for our non-Chicago sports fans, the thing that they need to understand what's so dysfunctional about this organization is the McCaskey family. Obviously, is the McCaskeys. They're the Hallases. George Halas, founder of the NFL, founder of the Chicago Bears. His daughter, he only had one child live long enough to run the franchise. His daughter, Virginia, married a McCaskey. And so she's now Virginia McCaskey, and she's 102. And her children have been running the show. George, I think the middle son, has been running the show since for 13 years now. He was the one that fired Lovie Smith, hired Mark Trestman, hired John Fox, hired Matt Nagy,
a lot of hirings, a lot of firings. He's the one who's notorious for bringing in consultants and not actually making the hire. He hires a guy like a Bill Polian who says, "What should I do?" And a Bill Polian takes the check for $1 million and goes, "You should hire Matt Eberflus, a Colts guy." Yeah. Oh, Mark, you have muted yourself, sir. You've I don't have the option to unmute you, unfortunately. There. Okay, you're back. You're back.
I'm so angry I'm muting myself. So in general, that's what non-Bears fans need to understand. This is what we've been dealing with as Bears fans. If you're wondering from afar, like, why is it not working? It's not working because, we're not Dan Snyder, right? We don't have allegations of sexual misconduct in our organization, all of the other horrible things going on in like a Washington, right? We're not, we're not the Clippers with Donald Sterling with racism and horrible owner in that regard, right? Our owners are a family of people that have admitted to saying we don't know football. And yet you're all the blood relative of the man who single-handedly is the reason we have the NFL today. And
right.
A man who played for the Yankees, played and coached for the Bears. He was literally Jackie Moon and led the Bears to more championships than any other team in the pre-Super Bowl era. The championship era of football still has like the top 3 most wins of all time, right up there with Belichick and Shula, George Halas. So, and that's just a family that says, we don't know football.
we're not football people. So we hire football people to run our football team, which is the only way they make money. Again, so that's the generic, like, this is how horrible it is, right? That's why it's so bad. This Shane Waldron hiring and firing is extra criminal because we said it on this show. Everyone said it on every Chicago media show, whether it was 670, ESPN, the Barstool Chicago stuff. Everyone who cares about the Bears, Chicago sports said, you're drafting Caleb Williams, pair him with a new head coach. I wasn't saying it had to be an offensive head coach. We prefer it to be an offensive coach, but the timeline lines up. In the George McCaskey era of running the Chicago Bears, his claim to fame is not having it line up to where your rookie coach and your rookie quarterback are lined up at the same time. To the Bears' credit, and I give them credit for this, unlike other organizations who pay a lot of money to veterans or extend a guy like Daniel Jones, we're not the Giants did that. The Bears have drafted 3 rookies, and when it got to the end of the rookie contract, they made the decision, you're not the guy. And we now see historically with the last 2, they're not, the guy. Neither of Justin Fields or Mitch Trubisky had their Baker Mayfield moment, right? Where it's like, oh no, he actually was pretty damn good. The Bears just screwed it up. Now you can also get mad that they're picking the wrong guy when you talk about the Josh Allens, the Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jacksons, all the other guys who've been drafted in that time that they could have obtained, right? So that's fair, right? But with this, it's so criminal because we knew that Caleb Williams and having the number 1 pick and having a guy who generationally was thought of as a generational talent, the most important thing was to make sure he got off to a good start. We said it all offseason. I don't care if the Bears only win 7 games, but if those 7 games are Caleb Williams is throwing for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns, like he did against the Jaguars in London less than a month ago, then that's all that matters, right? And what's so sickening about this is that, Dan, Matt Eberflus was never a good coach. He wasn't a good coach in his first 2 years, but he had the default of, well, we were trying to be bad. We weren't trying to win. I'm trying to build a culture, and I'm building a culture, but of course we're not winning. Look at our talent dearth. And he had that excuse built in. This was the year, and it just so happened he got the chance to do the rookie quarterback because the Bears are the only organization dumb enough to do that once, let alone 3 times in a row. And him and Ryan Poles had the option to sign a lot of offensive coordinators. They went with Shane Waldron. They interviewed 8 different people to be their offensive coordinator, including Cliff Kingsbury. They went with Shane Waldron. I don't know if Kingsbury and all these other guys would have actually taken the job, right? We don't know that because a lot of them, for what the reports were at the time, you can't rewrite history. A lot of guys didn't want the job because of this exact scenario. They felt as though everyone would be fired and they'd be starting fresh in ways.
Yeah.
That's the writing on the wall because that's what the Bears have done historically, and that's what any organization would do if they were dumb enough to keep a lame duck head coach and a rookie quarterback anyways, which the Bears are the only organization, again, dumb enough to do this. So Shane Waldron being fired is extra criminal because, again, to me at this point in time, we are now staring down the barrel of a locker room mutiny. The reports are not only that Shane Waldron was fired, Dan, there's reports, legitimate reports that Caleb Williams, there was veterans in the locker room today that not only
asked for Shane Waldron to be fired, okay? They also asked for Caleb Williams to be benched. That is a legitimate report that there were veteran players on the offense who asked for Caleb Williams to be benched. Now, from what I'm also hearing from people like David Kaplan and people I know who are tied into this, it wasn't out of malicious, like the kid stinks, but more like we stink.
Protect him.
and look at our offensive line. And again, that's a part of this, right? So there's a lot of factors. The offensive line it wasn't good to start the year, but it is completely injured. And no starters are healthy on the offensive line right now. Of the starters, there weren't even that good to start the year anyways. So there's a lot that goes into this. But the Shane Waldron hiring him and then firing him. And now Caleb Williams will be on his second offensive coordinator in 9 games. It's criminal. It's criminal. And that's what kills me as a fan. Like, it kills me that everything worked out, right? You got the first overall pick after you did the Hall trade with Carolina. It fell into your lap and you had the chance to draft the generational talent. And you fucked him in the face with this. You just screwed him. And now you screwed him so bad that we have people like DJ Moore and other people who are like, we should start the other guy, Tyson Bagent, who was an FCS player and in his appearances last year and even in the preseason was very just okay. Like, okay. So it's getting so ugly now that I wonder if it'll ever heal, if it'll ever get better. Dan, when you look at Trevor Lawrence, this is starting to feel a lot like Trevor Lawrence, right? Trevor Lawrence was criminally done his rookie year. Now, they paired him with a new head coach and as a rookie quarterback, right? But with Urban Meyer. The most important thing for Trevor Lawrence was getting the second head coach right. After 1 year with Doug Peterson, it felt right. But look where it is now. It's a disaster. It's a disaster in Jacksonville.
Yeah. And so, the common denominator is almost always the offensive line. I mean, that's the problem.
It's also systematic, bad, poorly run organizations.
Yeah.
The Chicago Bears are not the worst run organization in the NFL. They're just not. I know that seems like maybe cocky of me to say, but they're not. But the Chicago Bears are absolutely one of the 5 worst run organizations of the modern NFL in the last 20 years. The Bears, the Jets, the Jags, the Browns, and then the Raiders. I mean, every one of those teams have had a playoff pop, but every one of those teams, systemic corruption and horrible leadership. Washington now I remove from that because of even just this 9 games of what they've done with
they had their 20-year run.
And then I would also argue that Detroit now it's 4 years of insane growth and commitment and an organizational stability because of a great hire in Dan Campbell. So that's the news this today. I say this, all of this is hilarious because it happens now during Packers week, which is we all know the Bears can't. Matt LaFleur is 10-0 against the Chicago Bears. So, I mean, what's really concerning, a couple of things here. I want to get these last things in. Shane Waldron is the 8th member of Matt Eberflus's coaching staff to be fired or resign in the last 14 months. Matt Eberflus cannot keep a staff. And that is a direct reflection of him and his leadership. Dan, the Bears scored 35 points against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Caleb Williams was 23 of 29. He had an incredible quarterback rating, an incredible QBR. He threw 4 touchdowns. He ran for 56 yards in the win against Jacksonville. They scored 35 points as an offense. No defensive scores, no scores from special teams. Cole Kmet was the leading receiver and had 2 touchdowns in that game. In the 3 games after the bye, remember, the Chicago Bears went on a bye. Teams are supposed to get better on a bye, which is madness, right? Think about that. Teams are supposed to get better. Good coach teams get better on the bye. You go, Jaguars win. You're 4-2, bye week. You come off the bye, it's the Fail Mary. In that game, Caleb Williams, 10 of 24, 131 yards. Cole Kmet had 1 target, 1 catch, and they historically handed the ball off to Doug Kramer. That's what Shane Waldron's brilliance was in the post-bye. You say, okay, it's 1 stinker. Washington's pretty good. Let's get back on track. You're on the road against Arizona. You score 9 points, no touchdowns. Caleb Williams throws the ball 41 times. Why in God's name is he throwing the ball 41 times? I don't know. Shane Waldron in his brilliance. And in those 41 times he threw the ball, 0 targets to Cole Kmet. Let that settle in. And then, of course, New England, 19-3. Caleb Williams, 16 of 30, 120 yards, sacked 9 times after being sacked 6 times against Arizona. They have no offensive run game. DeAndre Swift, 16 carries, 59 yards, 73 yards total of running the ball. And let me see, Cole Kmet, 2 catches for 13 yards.
Yeah, 1 touchdown in 3 games.
Dan,
Pretty bad.
Waldron deserved to be fired, right? Because it's a massive regression against bad defenses. These are defenses on paper going into every one of these games are not performing well. You have Keenan Allen. You have DJ Moore. You have a first-round rookie in Rome Odunze. You have Cole Kmet. And I know you have no offensive line, and it's a horrible offensive line, but as an offensive coordinator, your job is to adapt to that and to game plan for your opponent and to take advantage of what your opponent's doing. And in 3 weeks after the bye, the locker room has been lost. The confidence is broken, and he deserved to get fired. It sucks because the whole staff should have been cleared out. But the Bears aren't going to do that because, again, we're a proud franchise and we don't fire a head coach in the middle of the season. We've never done that. I don't know what else to say except for at this point in time, the only goal for the new offensive coordinator, and if I am Ryan Poles, if I am George McCaskey, if I'm Kevin Warren, the three men leading the franchise, I would sit down with Matt Eberflus and Thomas Brown, the new offensive coordinator, and said, I don't care what the fuck you do. I don't give a shit if we lose the rest of the games. Protect this kid and make this kid grow and get him back on track like he was against Jacksonville. Figure it the fuck out. Like, that's the only goal. And then no matter what happens, you're probably going to be fired. But the only way you save your jobs and you have any chance of returning to this is if Caleb Williams over the last 7 games is looking like the best rookie quarterback or right back up there with Jane Daniels as a really good prospect. And we're so excited as Bears fans for the future. That's all that matters. It is all that matters. And DJ Moore, I've never had a quicker 180 on a player. Love DJ Moore. DJ Moore is a cancer, feels like, in this locker room. He's the one I know. I know he's the one. I know he's the one that asked for Tyson Bagent. He was recorded on the sidelines. What was it, week 1 or week 2, saying, like, walking by him after that? I think it was week 1, saying, like, we need you out there. DJ Moore is a selfish little man who's pissed about his own numbers, and he loved Justin Fields and didn't want to change anyways. And he is not playing team football. It's ugly in Chicago right now. Dan, my final point is there have been 2 offensive coordinators fired so far this season, Shane Waldron and Luke Getsy. They were the last 2 offensive coordinators for the Chicago Bears. Luke Getsy was such a bad hire that he got fired last year, and then he got hired by the Raiders, and he was fired by the Raiders. The only 2 offensive coordinators fired this season so far are the previous 2 offensive coordinators for the Chicago Bears.
No, that says everything that you need to know about the state of Chicago and how they hire their coaching staff. All right, well, I poured myself a beer for this episode because we are gonna take a look at
we're running out of football
the entire season up to this point. We'll look at the standings. I'm excited for that, and kind of get our thoughts on where we stand here now, 10 weeks into the NFL season, just past the midway point. As we, narrow down into the playoffs. So looking forward to that very much. And, in terms of the game talk, we'll obviously touch on that as we go through our discussion, but we will still give our best win, worst loss of the week. And so for the best win, I'll kick us off here. I'm going to go the Pittsburgh Steelers beating the Washington Commanders. I think this warrants it for sure. 28-27, the final. Obviously not the prettiest game from either team. Definitely not the prettiest game for the Steelers from an offensive perspective, but they were able to get it done. They made the plays that were necessary when they mattered most. And I think most people circled this game as one of the games of the week to watch. Pittsburgh coming off of a bye. Both of these teams, among the top in their conference, among the better stories to come out of the season so far this year. And so whoever was going to win this game was going to come out as probably a top candidate for best win of the week, just because of the stakes and the opponent and the trajectory both of these teams were on. Obviously, they won it in a very unique fashion with the hard count at the end of the game, getting the rookie out of Illinois, of all people. I think Jerzon Newton, I think is his full name. Obviously he feels terrible. That was a bummer. But really it just came down to, key plays at key moments for Pittsburgh. And I thought that was that's a hallmark of a really good team, is kind of rising up to the occasion in specific moments. Russell Wilson didn't have a great game. The offense in general, I mean, they didn't run very well either, but situationally they did. Jaylen Warren had moments in that final drive where he unfortunately fumbled. You can debate on whether or not forward progress should have been called there. But defense comes up with a stop late. That third down or fourth down miss by probably 2 inches for Zach Ertz. And then, of course, the hard count, the touchdown to Mike Williams, his first reception as a Pittsburgh Steeler. Great throw by Russell Wilson. So it was really just, those were the moments where you can see why Mike Tomlin made the decision that he did, because Russ's veteran leadership and experience comes through in certain moments of the game. Not to say that Justin Fields wouldn't have had his own moments in this game. They would have been different. I mean, he would have fared well getting out of the pocket. Russell wasn't able to evade the rush as well. But you just saw in those key moments the patience, the calm to beat a really, really good, talented team. And the biggest takeaway for me, Mark, in this game was, they let Jaden Daniels beat them with his arm, which honestly, he had a really good game despite him not showing up on the stat sheet very much. But they held him to 5 yards rushing. And so when you can
Steelers
take away,
are used to that.
They play Lamar Jackson all the time. And Lamar Jackson's 1-7. He's 1-7 against Pittsburgh in his career. I mean, there's a reason for that. They have a really good game plan against running quarterbacks. And so I think that ended up being the difference really in this game, is that Pittsburgh just stayed the course longer and were able to win out on top. Just kind of seemed like the older, more veteran-led team, and that's what led to a 1-point victory. But huge win for them. They stay atop of the North, and now they have a big showdown with Baltimore coming up this week.
It's funny. Your Steelers are one of those kind of weird team of destinies right now, where it's like they giveth and they taketh. The fake punt that they almost get, and then you get the fumble punt later in the game. So it's kind of like,
which, hey, that was a good call, by the way. A lot of people were like, I can't believe you did that. It was wide open. I mean, you take those shots all the time.
And so it's like, and then so you think, oh no, that's a negative, but then it equals out, right, with the fumble punt later on. So it's like the giveth and the taketh for the Steelers. A team of destiny has those moments, right? Also, I think the Mike Williams addition, like, that's exactly what you need. 1 or 2 of those a game. For Russ, still can throw that high arcing deep ball. Yeah. And Mike Williams, if there's one thing he does really good, it's catching balls like this over the shoulder, because that's what he's done his whole career. I don't need to say much more on Pittsburgh. You nailed it there. I'll just say Russ 3-0. And
by the way, Russell Wilson has as many touchdowns this season as Kenny Pickett did last year.
Yeah, I mean,
6.
Listen, guys who can operate from the pocket. It's just different. It's invaluable in the NFL. It's invaluable. Now, guys who can do it and run like Lamar, that's MVP stuff, right? That's what, so there's the levels to it. I'll say this about Washington, though, really quickly, because again, we're talking about this game. If I'm Washington, I'm not panicking about this at all. Again, you were at home against a really good team who's uniquely built to handle you, because they see the better version of you twice a year and have for the last 6 years. And also, you were in this game. Washington had every chance to win this game. It sucks, but again, Washington, you're only worried about Philadelphia right now. Dallas is dead. New York is dead. You're worried about Philly. And you can focus on Philly now. Thursday night's going to be a huge game for them.
Yeah, that's going to be probably the game of the week, and we get treated to that as the first game. All right, who you got for your best win?
We're going all the way out to the desert, to the Arizona Cardinals, 31-6 over the Jets.
Yeah,
I think it's my best win, because if they had stolen this game from the Jets at home, you'd say, all right, there go the Cardinals again. They're just kind of hanging on by the skin of their teeth, and I don't really know what to think of them. But Dan, McBride is a stud. They have Arizona has 3 running backs. How can you not like these guys? Benson, obviously Connor, he was their leading receiver. And then DeMarcado, as Bears fans know, he broke our hearts before half. They have 3 dudes who all are capable out of the backfield. You add in McBride, who's quickly becoming like Jimmy Graham 2.0, former basketball player in college, extremely athletic. He's one of those guys, like, I don't know how long it lasts, because like just freak athleticism, but ride this wave with this dude as long as you can. And then obviously Marvin Harrison Jr. was very involved, and he makes it look so easy. Kyler was perfect. I mean, if you look at Kyler's stats, I think I have it written down here. 22 of 24 with 266 yards and a touchdown, and then ran for 2 touchdowns. Like that's Kyler Murray from 3 years ago when he got him to 11-5 and they made it to the playoffs. And you're like, is he an MVP? He's rounding into that form. And I know it's the Jets and they're really dysfunctional, and Aaron Rodgers looks so old and so out of shape and so bad.
It's terrible.
He can't throw a deep ball right now. Like, you just couldn't do it. And maybe it's just like, hey, every other week. But it's weird because they had extra rest because they had played on Halloween. So I was very ready.
Yeah. They had a mini
very
bye.
ready for Jets. I thought the Jets were going to steal this one. And no, the Cardinals just beat them down early. And credit, I called out Gannon earlier in the year, like, hey, your defense, where's your defense? Well, they've showed up. They've won, 4 in a row? Arizona is flashing right now. They're 2 wins over 500. They have a lead in that division. I like Arizona right now. Can they get to 10 wins? We'll talk about it coming up in the meat of the show. But I think the sky is high for Arizona. It was a great win.
The NFC West is by far the most competitive division right now.
I can't wait for us to talk about the NFC West. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's an epic division so far. Worst loss for me goes to the Atlanta Falcons. Saints beating the Falcons here 20-17. Obviously divisional games kind of carry a different way to it, so you give some people some slack here and there because divisional games are tough to win, and it's tough to sweep an opponent that's in your division. But this came at a really bad time for Arizona or for Atlanta, and just a really bad loss in general. I mean, we're talking about a Saints team that was down and out completely. They're 3-7 on the year, coming in 2-7. Falcons were 6-3. You had an opportunity to you finish this at 7-3. You've basically locked up the NFC South.
The division.
And now these are the pockets where you say in a vacuum, it's one loss, it's not that big of a deal. But by the end of the season, when the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have somehow climbed back, Mike Evans comes back healthy, the Tampa Bay Bucks are right there competing and fighting and take the division in week 17 or 18, you're going to look back and at a winnable, very winnable game against the New Orleans Saints where you had an opportunity to create that separation and you kept that window open, that door ajar for Tampa Bay to come through. And look, I'm not saying the Bucs are going to win the division, but they certainly have a shot. And if they can somehow return to the magic that they found earlier at the beginning portions of the season, and as I mentioned, Mike Evans is going to return in a couple weeks, that could very well happen. So brutal for the Falcons there. They had this, ready for the taking. They were coming on the heels of 2 straight wins, kind of start stacking at that point. They got a trip to Denver, which we know is never an easy trip to make. And you got Bo Nix humming. Like, I feel like Denver, I might take Denver as the favorite to win that game at this point, to be honest with you. And then you start worrying about, the Minnesotas and the Chargers that they have after that. It's not an easy road, and Atlanta had the chance to take the division, and they didn't. So that's why they get my worst loss here. Not to mention the opponent was really bad.
Huge interim coach bump, Rizzy.
Yeah.
I'll say this. It was almost my worst loss. I went in a slightly different direction because I wanted to make a case for something, but I'm glad we get to talk about this one. Dan, the Falcons scored a touchdown to cut it to 20-17. Okay. Early in the third quarter. After that, their drives, Kirk Cousins with those weapons and that really solid offensive line. I know it's on the road, but you're in a dome. Like, everything should work out. Their drives were punt, missed field goal, interception, downs. That's how they lost the game. That's concerning. That's really concerning. You have a chance it's 2017. You don't have to score 3 touchdowns on your last 3 drives to win the game. You got to score a field goal, and then it's a coin flip to get into overtime. You score a touchdown, you win the game. And you go punt, miss field goal, interception, downs. That's bad. It's really, really bad. For New Orleans, again, it's the bump, and then it's dead, right? Like this was the Jameis Winston win, and back to earth. I have a feeling like New Orleans, the interim coach, dead. They're going to go back to earth. So I'm not worried about that. But for Atlanta, I've been saying it for weeks now. When we talk about the for frequency sake power rankings with the guys, I'm like, I don't get. There were people had, I think it was DJ had Atlanta all the way up to like number 6 or 5 in the power rankings. I just don't buy it. I think they're a one and done playoff team. If they make it, I'll make maybe
if they make it. That's the thing.
I'll make
right
that
now.
if case coming on up here in a little bit.
We love all of our fans, by the way, and we have a Grace Runkle who's a really big fan of the pod. So appreciate the support, Grace.
Yes, our listeners are very diverse. We have a diverse, very, very diverse.
That's right. We appeal to many.
The ladies love us. All right, Dan. I will say for my worst loss, I wanted to talk about this team in detail. That's kind of why I chose it as my worst loss. The Texans. Dan, did you realize the only good team the Houston Texans have beaten this year is Buffalo? That game was in Houston. It was really close, and it's a different Buffalo team now. That was pre-Amari Cooper and some other, it's a different Buffalo team. This is a Houston team that falls to 6-4. And again, look at, they've lost 3 of 4, by the way. So people keep saying like, oh no, the Texans, they lost 3 of 4. Now, we'll talk about the Texans' future coming up because I still think the future is very bright for the Houston Texans. When you look at their schedule, it's very, very easy. It's very easy. We'll talk about that. But Dan, they were up 23-7 to start the second half at home. You have the Lions on the ropes, and you go. These are the Houston Texans drives in the second half. Interception, punt, interception, punt, punt, punt. Miss field goal, you lose the game. CJ Stroud, there was, so you know how people are panicking in Chicago. Obviously, we talked about it for 20 minutes to start the show. Apparently, I heard this on ESPN 1000 today on Waddle and Sylvie. There is reports out of radio stations in Houston. They were running a poll like they may actually take the play calling away from Bobby Slowick. Bobby Slowick, who was talked about as maybe a head coach last year, and him and Ben Johnson, like the new gurus of offense. Well, look, CJ Stroud's getting killed back there. He's
definitely regression, the sophomore slump.
He's so accurate. He's such an accurate passer, and yet his completion percentage is down. Now, I know you had Stephon Diggs and Nico Collins, and those guys are out. But Mechie's a really good story. You have talented dudes there, and they can't protect him. And they couldn't run the ball yesterday either. Now, I get it. Detroit's a juggernaut. But when you're up 23-7, you should be able to score at home 7 points and put that game on ice. Like with a defensive coach, right? And then you slow them down. You don't let them score.
No, it was those 2 turnovers in those first 3 possessions that was absolutely killer. You can't have it. I
say this all because we're about to talk about what the future is for all these teams. And when you look at the future for the Texans, I'll spoiler alert, they might win 12 games here because their schedule is light to end the season. But remember this. They may get rolling here, and CJ Stroud might put up some numbies, and they may be like, oh my God, the Texans are 12-win team. They're gonna make it an AFC Championship game. Remember this game at home against a very good opponent. They absolutely crapped their pants like the Lions player did during that game. And it is it's one of those things you just got to remind yourself of when thinking the Texans might steal a win from the Chiefs. I don't know. Now, maybe when they get Nico back and everything's rolling, maybe they will be a different story. The problem is their opponents are so weak to end the season, I won't really know how to judge them. I'm going to judge them off this. They better crush this schedule coming on up here, or else I'm really going to be nervous.
Yes, they gotta get back to business and take care of these games for sure coming up. Otherwise, the AFC South can start to slip away. I mean, they're obviously biggest advantage in this situation is that they play in the AFC South.
They're going to win the AFC.
A lot of other struggling teams, but
they're going to win it.
But yeah, hey, but if the Colts win this week and the Texans lose this week, starting to tighten things up a little bit.
Maybe we talk about the Colts.
Magic.
Dude, they're 0-2 since the move to Joe Flacco, and it hasn't looked great.
That's been pretty bad. I feel like they're going to end up having to move back to Anthony Richardson, which is kind of a disaster
should.
at that point, but they should. Yeah. At this point, they absolutely should. All right, let's take a look at this landscape that we have here for the playoffs. So right now in the AFC, on the left-hand side here, we got the Chiefs as the 1 seed at 9-0, the Bills the 2 seed, Steelers 3 seed, Texans the 4, Ravens the 5, Chargers the 6, and the Broncos the 7. How about that? The Denver Broncos currently in the playoffs if they were to start today. So we can talk through the AFC.
Yeah, let's
and then
do
we'll
it.
get to the NFC portion. But obviously there's a lot of teams here on the bubble that are very interesting we can get to as well. But if you want, I mean, we could just start at the top with the Chiefs and kind of how they've been playing this year, including winning single-handedly with their special teams this time around against Denver.
Listen, that win against Denver is indicative of what this Chiefs team has really been the last 2.5 years. Like since the Tyreek Hill trade, this is what that team has been. They do enough to win, and they do enough of the fundamentals right. I thought this would be, listen, for some reason the Chiefs dominate their division and yet struggle within their division. It's the weirdest thing. They win all the division games, like they just win them all, except for that Raiders game last year. But they struggle. Like the division knows how to play Kansas City. The difference is they had the best head coach and the best quarterback, and situationally the best relationship with Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes. I'll say this about Denver again. I admit it. Egg on my face. They have surprised me. They really have, and I credit a strong head coach developing a young quarterback. How lucky would I be to have that in my life? I don't get it. The Denver fans do. I still think, again, the ceiling is low for Denver. But let's start with Kansas City. Dan, 9-0. So right now, obviously, the focus is can the Chiefs lock up the 1 seed? Well, they have a giant game against Buffalo this week. That's the game of the weekend. Buffalo has beaten the Chiefs in the regular season. We've seen that. I think you and I both believe Buffalo needs the home field advantage to have a chance to get through and get to a Super Bowl, right?
I would agree. Yeah. Especially because of the home that they play in. If they were Houston or, something like that, I would think a little bit less about that. But yeah, being in Buffalo is a huge advantage.
The problem for Buffalo is, okay, so you have 2 losses, the Chiefs have none. Let's say Buffalo wins, right? And we get to 9-1, 8-2. Okay, you're right in there, and you have the tiebreaker. But, Dan, the Chiefs still have the Panthers, the Raiders. Now, I know the Raiders play them tough, but come on. Like, the Panthers, the Raiders, and then they have Denver, which, again, they own their division. That's 3 wins. So even if they lose to Buffalo, we're saying they're probably 12 wins, right? And then you're going to argue with me that they can't also find a way to win one of the tougher games, which would be Cleveland, Houston, Pittsburgh, Chargers. They probably go 2-2 in that stretch. So we're talking about a 14-win team, in my mind, at minimum. I think I would be shocked if the Chiefs don't have the 1 seed. And that's if Buffalo can win against Kansas City. And that's a giant if.
That's a massive if. Yeah, no, I firmly believe that we're going to be talking about the 1 seed Kansas City Chiefs come season end.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I don't think they're going to go undefeated. I think they will lose one of these games here coming up, and probably 2, as you mentioned, a minimum 14 wins. That seems about right from where I sit right now, especially. And then getting to the Buffalo Bills there at number 2. They're a team as well that I feel like at a lot of times throughout the season, they haven't been playing up to what we expected them to look like. Kansas City is the very same way. Like people expected Kansas City to be a little bit, more not Mahomes dominant, because that was really not what was trending the last couple years. But just seeing a balanced attack, then Isaiah Pacheco goes down, and okay, they're kind of having to win in a variety of ways. Buffalo's kind of similar. Like Josh Allen has obviously put on his cape, and he's been the MVP caliber guy, but they've gotten way more out of the run game this year than I expected them to get. They've been a little bit more balanced. They get the trade for Amari Cooper. Now, obviously, he's been a little bit injured here and stuff like that, but his, presence overall has been a positive. And they're just getting a lot out of the receiving core that we thought, maybe wasn't going to be there with Stephon Diggs being gone and Gabe Davis being gone. And, Dalton Kincaid hasn't had the massive leap that we expected him to have. And yet they're still 8-2, looking great, winning close games, winning blowouts. They're just another one of those complete teams that I feel really comfortable about going into the postseason. They already have the AFC East locked up in my mind.
It's theirs.
So really it's about getting, it's about staying afloat and maybe they could push for that 1 seed, but at the very least you got to get that 2 seed.
Okay, so we talk about that right now. So can Buffalo make a push for the 1 seed? We figure they probably got to get to 13 wins to have a chance, right? Go the way the Chiefs' schedule is. Well, obviously they have to beat Kansas City in order to do that. If they don't win Kansas City, they're not getting the 1 seed because even then Kansas City will have the tiebreaker over them. But it's very realistic to me. I think they minimally get I think the Bills are a minimal 12-win team. So they're at 8 wins. They have 2 games against the Pats. They'll win those 2. They have a game against the Jets. They dominate in division. They'll win that game. So that gets them to 11 wins. And then you're telling me they can't win at least one of the games against Rams, Lions, KC, and Niners. They'll win one of those games. Probably 2, in my opinion. I'm looking at the NFC West games. I don't think they beat Detroit. I don't think they beat Kansas City. I think they could beat the Rams and the Niners. I think that Niners game is in Buffalo too. So big matchups. So listen, we're going to know if the Bills can win a Super Bowl by the end of the year, because by the end of the year, they will have played Detroit, Kansas City, and San Francisco, right? So I would rest Amari Cooper for maybe, unless he can go this week, then by all means go all in to try to beat the Chiefs. But otherwise, give Amari as much of a break as he needs, because really what you have Amari for there is to build enough chemistry so when you're at in the AFC Championship game, Josh Allen can actually convert a 3rd down. Like, that's the most important thing. And a big win against the Colts. They looked. Listen, he wasn't MVP, Josh, but again, I'm cool with my team finding a way to win a game, right? Like that's okay. That happens sometimes, especially on the road.
Yeah, no, I mean that's like you said, that just happens, and that's what you deal with every now and then. I'm going to take this opportunity before we move further down the list to just mention real quick, we are a part of the For Frequency's Sake podcast network, and this is something really cool that we do as a podcast network every year, and it's grown each year. The Toys for Tots Bowl, we have a lot of people invested and participating in our various fantasy leagues, all with the proceeds going towards Toys for Tots. There's still time to donate, so I did want to direct everybody to the For Frequency's Sake podcast network Facebook page. There you'll find this graphic. You'll find a lot more information about how to donate and where to do so. Any amount, really. If you got $1 to spare, $5, whatever it may be. We're very close to our goal, just a couple $100 short of it. So hoping to send a couple grand over to the Toys for Tots in the Quad Cities and help out some kids during the holiday season. So yeah, really excited that we get to do this and be a part of it, and look forward to getting those numbers, meeting that goal, and we're pretty close. So
I've always said Toys for Tots is the best thing to donate during the holidays, because I know if you write a check and you give it to the Salvation Army or whatever, it's probably going to help directly. But if you buy a toy and you put it in that box,
that's
exactly what's happening.
Direct.
That toy will end up under a tree on Christmas morning for a kid, and that's incredible.
Yeah, it's absolutely great stuff. So we're happy to be a part of that, and welcome anybody to donate if you can. All right, so going further down the list here, we got the Steelers there at the 3 seed. We already talked about them and the Commanders. This isn't where I expected them to be at this point of the season at the 3 seed. I did expect them to be in the playoff picture, though, at this point, because remember, the gauntlet is just coming here.
It's starting.
On the
Bears and the Steelers, the gauntlet begins week 11.
Yeah. We got 6 divisional games plus the Eagles and the Chiefs coming up to end the season.
It's crazy that's exactly what the Bears have, too. It's almost like the NFL is like, what?
Do the Bears have the Eagles and Chiefs as well?
No, but the Bears have 6 divisional games.
Yeah.
Plus the Seattle and 6 divisional games plus Seattle.
Okay. Yeah. So they've got They've got
fuck
a
me,
group
right?
there to
I
go
know.
through as well. Yeah,
So
exactly. No,
fuck.
it's not easy. No, this week against the Ravens is going to be big. It's going to be a big game, especially
It's
because this
huge.
one.
It's a great week of football.
Yeah, no, it really is a lot of divisional games. I mean, this is really where the bread and butter of the NFL season comes to fruition because we do see so many of these divisional games coming up late in the season. Ending. Usually, teams end the year with divisional games. But yeah, this one's at home, so this is the one of the two that I think Pittsburgh really needs to have. Going into the season, I usually bake them in at 3-3 in divisional play. They've usually been 4-2. They've been able to steal an extra one, usually against the Browns. But even if we just have them at 3-3 at this point, that gets them to their 10th win. And can they steal one against the Philadelphia Eagles or the Kansas City Chiefs and get themselves to 11? You'd think they'd be looking pretty good for possibly getting the division at that point, but that's looking far ahead. I think right now with them at the 3 seed, this makes a lot of sense. They are winning the division, so this is where you have to put them. But come season's end, I wouldn't be surprised if they drop down to the 5th. But I think at this point, Mark, the Steelers are probably going to be the 5th seed at the lowest, I would think, at this point, even with how difficult this end of season stretch is. I think the way they've been playing is they're almost like sure to lock themselves up the best of the wild card teams, given how the rest of the AFC has been playing. And I know that, the 7 seed here only has 5 losses. The Chargers only have 3. But I don't know, man. I feel pretty confident saying that the margin here for the Steelers is still pretty good.
Dude, it's a giant margin. I absolutely think the Steelers will get to 10 wins. You have 2 against Cleveland, 2 against Baltimore, 2 against Cincy, Kansas City, Philly. They will find a way to win 3 of 4. They're too good defensively, and Russ has been playing good football. The Bengals can't stop a nosebleed. Cleveland is all sorts of all over the map. They could easily sweep those games. Like I don't.
Yeah. They could get the 2 against Cleveland.
To me, the ceiling for Pittsburgh is about 11 wins, though. I don't know if they get 4. I don't know if they get 5 out of 7. I think they could get 4 out of 7, and I know they'll get 3 out of 7. But even if they have,
there's 8 total because they already had their bye, so they have 8 games remaining. 6 in division, and then and then Eagles, Chiefs. 5 out of 8 is still tough.
I don't think they'll get 5 or. That's really tough. But they're going to get 3.
But I see a universe where that happens.
Yeah, I do too, because Cleveland and Cincy are so dysfunctional and they've had such a weird year. And then you're not telling me that they can't. Philly has an off day. Kansas City, you know what I mean, offensively struggles. So if Pittsburgh's defense can hang with Kansas City's offense, and then obviously Baltimore, you split with Baltimore and you sweep your other division. I'm going to cap the Steelers, in my opinion, at 11 wins, and I'm going to feel really confident they'll probably get to 11 wins. I'd be shocked. Yeah. I'd be shocked if they got 12. I'd be shocked if they get 9. So to me, it's 10 or 11. They're there, and that's a playoff spot. And then and if they are hosting a playoff game, good luck to the team that has to go to Pittsburgh and deal with Renegade twice on a night game in Pittsburgh. Good luck. And if they're on the road, then they're the team you don't want to place because you got TJ Watt just fucking destroying teams, and he can win himself a playoff game if he wants.
Yeah. I mean, it's 7 years since they've won a playoff game. It's very much overdue.
If Pittsburgh misses the playoffs, it's a fire everyone type of offense.
That's one of the bigger collapses, it
would be a gigantic
Eagles of last year,
It'd be a gigantic collapse if they missed the playoffs. It would be a fire everyone offense for sure.
So the Texans at 4, that's the interesting team. We kind of talked about it. They really are just going to be staring at the Indianapolis Colts, who are kind of nipping at their heels.
Dan, they have 7 games left. 2 against the Titans, the Jags, the Cowboys, and the Dolphins. They could run the table.
They're a candidate for that for sure.
The Jaguars the Texans could absolutely be 13-4, And if they are, that's a problem for Buffalo. That's a problem for Pittsburgh. That's a problem for Baltimore, because that means that Houston probably gets the 2 seed, right? So all of those teams then are like, fuck, now we are going to have to travel at some point in time. But the problem is, will they be a fraud at 13-4? Most likely. My guess is they'll lose one of them, right? Like they'll slip up somehow. Maybe Miami, maybe the Titans in one of the two, maybe the Jags if Trevor comes back, but Trevor might not play the rest of the year. I think more than likely, if I were a betting man, I would take the Texans to win 13 games at this point in time.
Yeah. No, I am not so bullish on Houston. Despite that easy schedule,
the Cowboys can't play. They might be playing Trey Lance. The Jags are playing Mac Jones. The Dolphins are the team that could beat them.
We don't know if Mac Jones is going to be starting at that point, do we? I mean,
Trevor Lawrence right now. The last I heard is this talk they can just shut him down for the year, which is probably the smart thing to do. You just paid him, and if he's not healthy, what the hell are you doing? Like, don't get him injured.
Yeah.
So, and the Titans are frisky, but they're not beat the Texans twice frisky. They're maybe beat the Texans once. At worst, this is an 11-win team, in my opinion. At worst, they're an 11-win team, 5-7. And so, again, that provides a problem for Pittsburgh, for Baltimore, and maybe for Buffalo. And i.e., you can't slip up. You really can't slip up because the Texans have such an easy path to the 2 seed.
They do. It's probably the easiest of this entire playoff seeding group to get there. Do you think the Baltimore Ravens, I mean, I imagine you envision them being the AFC North champions by the end of the season, currently the 5 seed at 7-3?
At this point, I would say yes.
And they have a not easy schedule, but a definitely more manageable schedule than.
So I want to walk through. I have Baltimore as a point I have all their opponents written down, but just not in order. I want to kind of go through the order on this here really quick.
Yeah.
So Baltimore.
So they're on the road the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. So Baltimore's at Pittsburgh, at the Chargers. Okay. Then you look at it. They're a 7-win team, right? So I capped the Steelers at 11 wins, right? So can Baltimore get to 12? So they would need to win 5. They have a really tough 3-game stretch, right? Steelers, Chargers, Eagles. That's tough. That's really tough. If they go 1-2, that's very plausible. I don't think they're going 3-0 in that stretch, and I think 2-1 is going to be really tough. Chargers are physical as hell. They're on the road. Pittsburgh is physical as hell. They're on the road. And then the Eagles are a really, really talented roster, and they are so close. It's not much of a travel game, right? But they end the year with the Giants, with the Texans, with the Browns. I forgot Houston also has to play Baltimore. I have that written down as well.
Yeah, like end of the season, right? It's like second to last week or something.
Second to last week. So that could be a big one for seeding too, right?
That's in Houston, yeah.
Can Baltimore find their way? I think they can win 4 of this next 7, but I don't think they win 5. I mean, Baltimore's really good offensively, but their defense stinks. They obviously are going to beat the Giants. I think they'll get revenge against the Browns. They're better than the Texans. So that's 3 games right there. Can they split against Pittsburgh? That's 4 games.
Probably.
And then can they split either the Ravens, the Chargers, or the Eagles? Possible. That's 5 games. It's in play for 12 wins. I think 11 wins is more likely. And depending on how tiebreakers and all that work, then that's how I see them getting Pittsburgh. But I will say, Dan, I truly think in a weird way, Pittsburgh's gauntlet is somehow easier because of Cincinnati. Like the Baltimore already being done with Cincinnati, I think now plays in favor to Pittsburgh because Cincinnati can't stop a nosebleed.
Yeah, no, that's very true. I mean, they're giving up a ton of points. So any team can have their way with that defense for sure. It's just about, can you stop Joe Burrow? I think Pittsburgh has the defense to do that.
And I will say, if Lamar wants a third MVP, this is a gauntlet. It's a good gauntlet to go through. Like, I mean,
true.
If he can get this Ravens team to 13 or 14 wins through that end of the season, he will be playing lights out. And maybe it's Derrick Henry playing lights out too, and Derrick Henry wins Offensive Player of the Year or whatever. But that's a slog to go through.
We got the Chargers at 6, Broncos at 7 there.
High on the Chargers. High on the Chargers.
So you think the Chargers are staying in the playoff race and staying here come end of season? They're not leaving this chart.
Again, if you're the Chargers, 10 wins, right? You got to get to 10. You already have 6. You have games against the Pats.
I feel like 9 might get you a wild card.
Oh, 9
in
very well
AFC.
could get at least the 7 seed, it looks like. But
right,
let's say 10 locks it up. They have the Pats, the Raiders, the Bengals. They also have Atlanta, Denver, and Tampa, plus Kansas City and Baltimore. So they lose, let's say they lose to Kansas City and Baltimore, right? Okay, that's 5 losses. This could right now they're the number 1 defense in football, and they have an incredible offensive identity with a physical run game. That destroys the Pats. That destroys the Raiders. That probably beats the Denver and Cincy. And then you're telling me they can't win against either Atlanta or Tampa? I think they can win against Atlanta. I like them a lot more than Atlanta right now. I don't know if I like him
Justin
as much
Herbert, even though he's not playing the volume that we saw early in his career, he's playing way more efficient. Yeah,
it's incredible. You watch the tape. Don't just look at the box
see.
Score. You nailed that there, Dan. That's a great point. So I think this Chargers team is probably an 11-win team. I have them either the 5th or the 6th seed in the AFC playoffs. Pittsburgh and the Chargers are going to be nightmares as far as wild card teams go. And they're going to be a lot of fun and very, very good football teams heading into the playoffs. And
the biggest question really is Denver, because they've been a surprising team. I mean, they were 1 field goal away from beating the Kansas City Chiefs this past week. Like, their defense has been the biggest surprise, but Bo Nix has really come along in recent weeks too. Like, they're the team where I'm like, this is the time of year now where their home games become much, much more impactful.
Totally.
I mean, can they hold on to this 7th seed? They are benefactors of a brutal end of the AFC here, which is so many of these teams underperforming. But
Dan, if you scroll
the
down,
Bengals could easily, get
like,
rid of it.
hold it, go back a little bit over there.
Go up,
to
the middle
the Dolphins at 10, right there, right. I think you can eliminate from the AFC playoffs 10 through the rest of the list. I don't think the Dolphins are making it. I don't think the Jets and any of those other teams are going to get to 9 wins. I don't. I really don't. The Dolphins, you could argue.
Well, and look at the percentages here. I mean, the Bengals have a huge jump from the Dolphins here, 10% probability to 28%. Dolphins and below have brutal odds.
Miami has to win 6 of their last 7. Yes, they have the Raiders. Now, listen, they could go on a run, right? They have the Raiders and the Patriots. Miami is 5-6, but then they play at Green Bay on Thanksgiving. That's a loss. So there's 7 losses, right? Then they have the Jets. That's winnable. But then they have Texans, Niners, Browns.
Yeah.
All 3 of those games, they're in Cleveland. That's in fucking December 29th. That's a loss. So I'm eliminating everyone Dolphins down. I don't even want to talk about them. Let's talk about the Bengals and Denver. Okay. Which of these 2 teams? And Indy. So Indy, let me go to Indy here real quick, because I'm not considering Indy totally. I think Indy is also, again, if you look at it, they'll fall apart. Let me give you Indy's schedule as well. They have to win 6 games to get to 10, 5 to get to 9. Indy's next game.
Can we get 5?
Indy's next game is at the Jets. Let's say they beat the Jets, all right? So they're at 5. They're hosting the Lions. That's a loss. Okay. They play the Patriots. That's a win. They're at 6. And then it's Broncos, Titans, Giants, Jags. So there's a lot. And that's why they're probably going to stick with Flacco. So can they get to 9? It's plausible. I just don't think, from what I've seen so far, Flacco has the arm and the energy. They're going to lose one of those games they shouldn't lose. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not buying Indy. Indy's very plausible.
No,
but
I
if you
think the Bengals have a much better chance of
Bengals and
usurping.
Denver. So let's talk about Denver really
Yeah.
quick. Again, they almost beat Kansas City. Denver, if you look at them, they're a team that I just had it. Hold on, let me pull it back up. They're a team that, again, 5 wins. Can they get to 9? All right. Well, they have the Falcons. That's winnable, right? Would I be shocked if they lost that game? No, but it's winnable. Then they have the Raiders. Divisional game. They probably win that game. So let's give them 6 there. Then the Browns come to town. That's a winnable game. Colts come to town. That's a winnable game. And then you end the season, though, Chargers, Bengals, Chiefs. So,
yeah. I mean, that Bengals game could be the determining
exactly
a key determining factor for that.
One of the reasons why I like Cincy to get to 9 wins is because they have Dallas, Tennessee. Yeah. Those are wins. So they're under at 6-6. Pittsburgh twice. Let's say they get one against Pittsburgh. That's 7. Cleveland, I think they're better than Cleveland. That's 8. They lose to the Chargers. They beat Denver. They have the head-to-head against Denver. 9 wins. That I'm going with Cincy, but so what I want our viewers to gather from this is the AFC playoffs is locked up. 6 through 1, those are playoff teams. 7, 8, and 9, pick whichever one you want, and that's your 7 seed, and they'll get blown out in the first round.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I definitely don't disagree with most of that there. I think come end of season, the Bengals will have somehow found a way to get that 7 seed.
Yeah.
I think the rest of this looks pretty much like what it's at right now. Maybe the Steelers and Ravens swap spots.
But that would be...
But that's pretty much it.
And maybe Houston and Bills. And maybe, you know what I mean? Like that.
Yeah.
That 2 seed is very up for grabs.
Yeah, most definitely. But yeah, I mean, you see the percentages here. The AFC from the 5th seed up has a 98% chance, all of them, to make the playoffs. Like, this is already pretty much baked into being the playoff group.
Yeah.
Whereas you look on the NFC side, and the 3 seed down is 80%, 59% for the 4 seed, 80% here, 70. So it's a little less certain on the NFC side.
What's so funny about that is we get into it, Dan. If you scroll down, though, like if you scroll down, so
yeah, 49ers have a better chance.
Hold there. The 49ers, Rams, and Seahawks and Buccaneers, 8, 10, 11, and 12 are all in play. But 9 is not in play for the playoffs. Scroll down. And then everyone else is not in play. It's the NFC South winner and it's the NFC West winner. And then it's everything in the playoffs already, I think, is locked in. So we can go through it.
Yeah.
But I truly think it's the NFC North with 3, and then it's who wins the West, who wins the South, they're in, and then I think it's the Eagles and Commanders that make it. And I can make an argument for people are thinking only one NFC West team. Yeah, the schedule
they cannibalize each other.
The schedule and the wins already favor the Eagles and the Commanders, and then the NFC North. And we'll go through it. You want to start at the top with Detroit?
Yeah, absolutely. 8-1, obviously the 1 seed. They've held on to that for quite some time.
Great
the Eagles
win against the Texans.
Yep. And the Eagles at 7-2 are on a streak, obviously, of their own. That is probably going to be the biggest deterrent to the Lions, and I think home field advantage is going to be important for Detroit. That's one of those teams that really thrives and feeds off of the energy of their fan base. So I think it's really important, and I do see the Lions hanging on to this 1 seed throughout the year. I think it might, shuffle a couple times here, but come playoff time for real, I think we're still going to be talking about the Lions being the 1 seed.
Absolutely.
For a lot of factors, and they have all of the pieces. And we talked about, I think you had mentioned that the upcoming trip, their next 3 games, they could go 3-0 over that span pretty easily. They play the Jaguars at home. They go on the road to Indy. They play the Bears, who are in a whirlwind right now.
On Thanksgiving at home.
Yeah. And then back-to-back Packers, Bills. I don't see Detroit. They just don't strike me as a team right now that's going to go into a slump. So I think they're winning one of those two.
And
games.
that Packers game is at home because they already beat the Packers on the road. So
both
Dan,
of them are. The Bills game's at home too, which is a big break for them.
And so Dan, at minimal, this is a 12-win team. So they have 8.
Facts.
They have 8, but minimal 12 because Bears are 2 wins. That's 10. Jags is a win. That's 11. Colts is a win. That's 12. And then Green Bay, Minnesota, 49ers, Bills. They're probably at worst 2-2 in that stretch. I think they're better than all 4 of those teams, but at worst, I'll give them 2-2. So that's definitely a 12-win team, most likely a 14-win team, quite possibly a 15 or 16-win team.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they really could
Jared Goff threw 5 picks on the road against Houston, and they won.
Yeah.
Like
that was what was remarkable to me about that more than anything is that exact point is that
people who
Jared
are saying,
Goff,
"Oh, you're overhyping the Lions." He threw 5 interceptions on the road and they won, and not against the Jags, but against the Texans.
And not only that, but it was like he had been playing so well, so it's like, oh, it was one of those where like everything came to a head and everything came crashing down. No, it still didn't. It still didn't all come crashing down. Because they were able to right the ship, and their defense has seemingly, can you imagine with Aiden Hutchinson what this defense would be looking like right now? I mean, it's really incredible, and we'll see what their what the presence of Zadarius Smith is like because they didn't even have him playing for this game. So yeah, that end the road trip to the 49ers and the game against the Vikings to end the season. That's going to be they're not going to have the 1 seed locked up by that point. It's going to take something to happen in that 2-game stretch there, in my view, for them to lock it up. But I think they'll take care of business.
I think they'll have it locked up by then because because I don't think anyone else is going to get close to that many wins. I think the Eagles can get.
Close.
We'll go through Philly's schedule
going into those final 2, the final 2 games. Right. Like I could see Detroit losing one of the next 5.
7. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Or even 2. I mean, they could lose to the Packers and Bills. That could happen. And then you've got 3 losses there.
I'll believe it when I.
But yeah, we'll get to it. Let's talk about the Eagles.
Okay, so EAGLES Eagles. Great win for them over Dallas. I mean, there's not much to talk about in that win because Dallas is dead. So Philly just crushed them and took care of business. Philly. What's interesting about their schedule, again, let's say they got to get to 10, right? Well, they play Dallas again. That's 8 wins. They play the Panthers. That's 9 wins. They play the Giants. That's 10 wins. Okay, so we got the 10. They're in the playoffs. Now they have 2 games against Washington. Thursday Night Football this week. Again, we have like 4 great games this weekend. It's rivalry weekend. The divisional games are starting. Washington and Philadelphia is going to be a battle. So let's say they split with Washington. So now they're at 11 wins. And then you look at the other games that schedule is Rams, Baltimore, Pittsburgh. I think they beat the Rams. I think they're better than the Rams. And can they then split against Pittsburgh and Baltimore? That's 13 wins. So that's where I agree with you that like, all right, they can maybe keep the heat on the Lions. But I think I think there'll be a point in time where tiebreakers stuff with the Lions in the last 2 weeks will be able to make some decisions about who they want to start and rest and all those other things. But listen, Philly's biggest hangup is their coach. The thing I worry about Philly, Dan, and I think
the unpredictability.
If they do something really dumb, like how the Bears lost in the Hail Mary and it's ruined their season, they hate their coach and he's so unpredictable in Sirianni that if they lose the game on Thursday night in tragic fashion, would it shock you if all of a sudden we're talking about Philly stumbling into the playoffs, losing the division, and they're kind of a mess because of the coaching?
No, I mean, they did it last year.
Because we saw it last year. So I'm going to think they have things turned around, and Saquon is a huge part of that. I think they beat Washington both times, and I think they win this division actually pretty easily, and I think they get to about 13 wins. I think they're the 2 seed, and I think they are this year's legit threat to the Lions because they have an offensive line, they have the weapons, and then Hurts is the X factor, right? I trust Goff a little bit more, but Hurts can make bigger plays at big moments, and that's going to be an amazing game in an NFC title game in Detroit, Philly, Detroit. Sign me up for that right now.
Do the Falcons hang on to the NFC South? Because we know only one of those teams is making the playoffs this year.
So what I love about the Falcons at 6-4, they have some really tough games. Okay, so they got to get to 10, right?
And a road
so
trip,
they have Carolina, that's 7. They have the Giants, that's 8. They have the Raiders, that's 9. Okay?
It should be, yeah.
But then they also play Denver on the road this week, the Chargers, the Vikings, and Washington. So they have to win at least one of those games, not slip up against the Raiders, the Giants, Carolina. They can't slip up. And then they have to win Washington, Minnesota, Chargers, and Denver. Right now, I think Denver, Chargers, Minnesota, and Washington are all better teams than Atlanta. So as of right now, Dan, and I did the playoff predictor on Pro Football. It's not, ESPN doesn't have the playoff machine out yet. And I did this when you told me you want to do this. I did this at work today. I just picked the games. I have the Bucs winning the division. And I can walk you through the Bucs here in a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, they've lost 4 in a row, but they have
their
Giants,
schedule
Panthers,
easier.
Raiders. They could win 3 in a row easily and rebound.
Their schedule's easier. If you want to, Giants. They have 2 against the Panthers, so that's they're 6-6. They have the Giants, Raiders. They're 8-6. They have the Saints. They're 9-6. They have Dallas. They're 10-6, and then they have the Chargers. They're 10-7. It's a 10-7 football team. They are like the Texans. Everything opens up for them in the end of the year, and I think that can Atlanta get to 10? Maybe, but they can. But and I know
but
they have
feel
the
better about Tampa's chances.
They have the tiebreaker. Yeah, they have the tiebreaker because they won both games against Tampa. But I feel way better about Tampa's chance. I have way better about Tampa's chance to get to 10 than I do Atlanta's chance to get to 10. The Denver game this weekend is huge. They're on the road outside in Denver. They've been getting snow the past couple of days. I think Denver finds a way to win that game, and Atlanta it's going to start tightening up. You're not going to think it's tightening up because you're going to see them at 6-5, and you'll see the Bucs at 5-6. You're like, no, it's still Atlanta's division, but that's where you have to look ahead. It's a cakewalk for Tampa, and they're getting Mike Evans back, and Tampa still has a bye to get even healthier still.
Yeah, very true. This is the interesting part to me. Is when we get to this 4 seed, because I think a lot rides on this. This is the most interesting aspect.
So exciting.
Something's got to give. So whether it's we don't get 3 NFC North teams in the playoffs, or here's my point. I think the 49ers are definitely making the playoffs. That's how I feel. I feel that they are primed for. They're getting healthier.
Okay.
I still believe in Kyle Shanahan. Like, I think this is a playoff team. I truly think that they're a good football team, and starting to hit their stride.
So
something's got to give, because the Cardinals have a manageable back half, but it's not easy, and the 49ers have a pretty tough back half.
So Dan, can I take this conversation this way? Let me make the case really quickly for the fact that 3 NFC North teams, aka not the Bears, they're making the playoffs. Okay. All 3 of the NFC North teams, the Packers, the Lions, we already know. The Vikings and the Packers, they're gonna get to 10 wins. So listen to this: the Vikings have 2 games against the Bears. They're a 7-win team, so they're at 9 wins. They play the Titans. They're at 10 wins, and after that, they still have Seattle and Atlanta winnable games, and Arizona winnable game. So they could get to. I think Minnesota's now their basement is 11 wins, right? Green Bay.
I don't agree with that. I have pumped the brakes on Minnesota over the last few weeks. I think the Sam Darnold, it's a shaky ground. I feel like we're starting to kind of see.
There's still 10 wins.
I get it. I get
They're
it.
already at
But
7 wins, Dan, and they play the Bears twice and the Titans. That's 10 wins. So I think there's only my case. What I'm trying
hey,
to say.
we just saw the Bears lose to the New England Patriots, right? Anything can happen on any given Sunday. I'm just
Yeah,
saying.
the Bears are going to
like,
lose twice to the Vikings. Yes, I know it's going to happen on any given
Well,
Sunday.
the Chiefs almost lost to the Broncos, like.
And the Bears will almost beat the Vikings, and they'll lose both games. So, Dan, the point I'm trying to make, and then we can get back to it, is that I agree with you. I think the Niners are the pick in the West, but I truly think the West is only getting one team, and same with the South.
Yeah,
Because
I don't disagree. I don't because it's hard because the Cardinals have been playing so good, and I truly do believe in them as like a quality football team. They don't have a gimme schedule, and like who would I trust over like a tough end of year schedule?
Yeah,
Kyle
Niners or
Shanahan
Cardinals.
and the Niners, system of players versus the Cardinals. It's got to be the Niners for me. I mean, the Cardinals have, 2 Seahawks in sandwiched weeks coming up here, then a road trip to Minnesota. They get some reprieve with the Patriots and Panthers, but then it's ending the season with Rams 49ers. Like that's a tough, it might come to, it's probably going to come down to the 49ers Cardinals at the end of the season, which I hope for, because that's going to make that game that fucking awesome.
Dan, let me just finish on this point. So I think the Minnesota's a 10-win team and they're in. Do you think Minnesota makes the playoffs or misses the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, if I had to bank on it or bet on it, I'd probably say Minnesota does squeak in.
They squeak
in,
I
think
right?
I think 10 wins. Like
they're probably the 7th seed. I have them as the 7th seed.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
Because I think Green Bay at 6 wins, I think that Green Bay does better. The Packers are beating the Bears twice. That is a fact. Matt LaFleur is 10-0 against the Bears. The Bears are not beating the Packers. So the Packers go to 8 wins, right? The Packers still have the Saints. That's 9 wins. And they have the Dolphins on Thanksgiving night in cold Green Bay. That's 10 fucking wins, okay? So there's your 10. They also have...
I think the Dolphins could beat the Packers. I think the Packers will win that game. I would take them to
Okay, so let's... But,
I don't think it's a gimme.
So then you have Seattle, Minnesota, Detroit, 49ers. I think the Packers play the Niners really well. The Packers could absolutely beat the Niners. The Packers could absolutely beat Seattle. And the Packers could absolutely beat Minnesota. I don't think they beat Detroit. I think Detroit sweeps the Packers because that game is in Detroit. So to me, both Minnesota and Green Bay are like locked in 10 wins, right? So if you have Detroit at locked in probably 13 wins, Minnesota and Green Bay locked in at 10 wins, we then go to the NFC West. So now let's go through. You want to go through the Niners, Cardinals, and let's not forget about my Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah. No, I know. It's
so
the Rams are at 4 and 5.
Me,
they're a game.
They have the easiest schedule of the 3 of them. Listen to the Rams schedule. Pats, Jets, Saints. I think those are 3 wins for the Rams. So now they're a 7-win team. So now they have to win 3 of 4 to get to 10. They already beat the Niners this year, so they can beat the Niners. They played Arizona, and Arizona blew them out. But that was in Arizona. So they can get Arizona maybe at home. Sean McVay historically is great against Seattle. So that's toss-up. And then it's the Eagles. And I think that game is in L.A. So I know. Listen, the Rams are in a tight spot. They have to win 6 of 7. But it's plausible. It's plausible. I don't think it's probable, but it's plausible. That Dolphins loss last night at home fucking killed them. Because if they win that game, then they only have to win 5 of 7, and they have more wiggle room. Now it's 6 of 7. So I'm going to put the Rams at like a 15% chance to win the division with 10 wins, but they're there. Let's go to Arizona. Arizona, they have to get to 10 wins, right? New England, Carolina are on their schedule. So they're at 8 wins. The Rams, Niners, they've already beat the Niners. They've already beat the Rams. They could obviously beat those 2 teams again. Seattle, twice. They have Seattle twice. That's the deciding factor for Arizona. If Arizona finds a way to beat Seattle twice, and then they beat New England, Carolina, all they have to do, Dan, is win 1 game of Rams, Niners, Minnesota, and they're an 11-win team and they win the division. I struggle finding the Niners getting to 11 wins. Here's why. The Niners, like your Steelers, they still have 8 games remaining. So in order for them to get to 11 wins, they got to get to 6. They got to get 6 out of these games that I'm about to say. The Bears is 1. Miami is 2. Every other game to me is a toss-up. Seattle, Green Bay, Bills, Detroit, Rams, Arizona. It's a slog for the Niners. Arizona,
no,
to
yeah,
me,
they have a brutal stretch.
If you're playing the percentages and betting, Arizona is the betting favorite to win this division. Now, historically, and these games happen on the field, not on paper, it's the fucking Niners, and they're loaded, and McCaffrey's back and looked good, like real good. And so I get why you say, but I think the Niners, if they win it at 10 wins. They don't win it at 11 wins. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's the fact that they beat Arizona and Arizona stumbles somewhere else, and it comes down to Arizona and 49ers final game of the season, and that's how the Niners win it. To me, that's the only way the Niners win this division. It comes down to the final week, and then they just have the prowess and the dudes, and they win it.
Yeah. No, I think that's a very plausible scenario.
They have the Bills
I do
and the
agree with
Lions and the Packers still the Niners. That could be that. That's 3 losses. That's 7 losses, maybe minimum. Like it's a slog for the Niners, dude. They're 5-4 and they have a slog.
Yeah, no, it's an uphill battle. There's no question about it. I just put my faith in their skill group and Kyle Shanahan to get there. That because that would be a pretty epic collapse if you think about it. I mean, that's
for sure.
That's pretty brutal.
Now
but I did have them as the 1 seed coming into the year, and that obviously doesn't look.
And I had the Rams winning that division, and I love that through all the hell that my Rams have been through, they still have a chance. They're alive.
They are alive. They are alive.
Can I say that we should just check in on Washington really quick? I know the Eagles have a really nice path, but the Commanders do too. So let's say they lose to the Eagles. They're the road team on Thursday. It's really hard to win road games on Thursday. Let's say they lose, right? So they're 7-4. Well, then they have the Cowboys at home. That's a win. They're an 8-win team. They have the Titans. That's a win. They're a 9-win team. They have the Saints. That's a win. They're a 10-win team. And then it's Eagles, Falcons, Cowboys. The Cowboys, they win again. They're an 11-win team. This is an 11-win minimal Commanders team, right? And they easily could beat the Falcons at home. And then maybe so it's the 2 games against the Eagles. For the Eagles and the Commanders, whoever can win, whoever can sweep each other, they win that division. And I think the Eagles have a slight advantage in that, in the sense that they get the Thursday game at home. And then they get the equal footing Sunday game on the road. And they have more talent, and they've been there before. So I think they probably sweep the Washington, and that's what the division comes down to. But Washington's going to be like the Texans, a 12 maybe or more win team that I don't buy because they haven't beaten anyone, but they're a 12-win team.
Yeah. And those are, rare to come by, but that is a situation we could find ourselves in come season's end. With Washington, even, going on the road as a 12-win team, or even if they somehow, pass the Philadelphia Eagles hosting a playoff game, and you still might not feel terribly confident about Washington winning.
It's crazy that we're going into week 11, and I can almost guarantee you we know who the playoff teams are, and I can almost guarantee you we know the seeding of them too. I mean, in the NFC, it's Lions, Eagles, whoever wins the West, and then whoever wins the South, and then it's probably then Washington, Green Bay, Minnesota. Like that's it. Right?
Yeah. So I mean, I guess my question to you is, who do you think the 49ers win the West? Or do
No, I
you
have
think
Air.
the Cardinals
I'm
win
going
the
there.
West?
I'm going with Arizona. I'm
You
going
are
with
going.
Arizona.
Okay.
I'm
So you're
gonna
saying
ride.
the 49ers are missing the playoff. Like that
I'm gonna
as it stands right now,
I'm
that's
gonna
your
trust my eyes, and I'm gonna say Arizona's hot as hell, and they're playing really sound football, and their path is easier. They have an easier path,
they
and
do.
that plays into it. I mean, that really plays into it. And I'm sorry the Niners have been injury bitten, but finding them 5 wins in their last 8 games is really hard when 3 of those games are against teams I think are better than them. And then their easy wins are a division against Arizona, a division against Seattle, a division against the Rams,
Yeah.
and then Miami. Like the Bears are an easy win. So they have 1 easy win left. Every other game, either they're a toss-up or they're not favored in my opinion. And I get it. They're a 2-time Super Bowl appearance team, and their head coach is fantastic, and they have a ton of talent. But that's asking a ton of this team. That's still without their number 1 guy going to the season at wide receiver, and a kicker who we don't trust. We didn't talk about the game. We don't trust
I know.
Mooney.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. No, that was a very problematic situation with him coming back and clearly not
Debo
needing to
punching
knock
the
rust off.
punter.
But yeah, Debo. Yeah, that was kind of wild, huh?
So I'm going with Arizona, and I'm going with the Eagles to win the division, Washington to finish 5th. I'll take Green Bay and the 6 seed Minnesota and the 7 seed. And then I have Kansas City 1, Baltimore, Houston 2, Buffalo 3, Baltimore 4, Pittsburgh 5, Chargers 6, Cincy 7.
Okay. All right. I think if I were to take a lukewarm stance, I'm putting right now the 49ers
Andre
in the playoffs
Iguodala.
with Arizona.
The Max.
So I'm going to say one of the NFC North teams
falls
doesn't
apart.
make the playoffs. Whether it's Minnesota
It's got to
or
be
Green
Minnesota
Bay,
then.
I think one of them has a collapse. Yeah.
Because Dan, again, Green Bay has.
I think Green Bay's a better team than Minnesota, to be honest with you. I mean,
Green
I
Bay
really do
is
believe
going
that.
to get to at least 9 wins because they have the Bears twice and the Saints. That's 9 wins. And then the Miami game is an absolute should win at home on Thanksgiving at night. And then Seattle, Minnesota, Detroit 49ers, they're going to win one of those 5 against Miami, Seattle, Minnesota, Detroit 49ers. So they're a 10-win team. Like they're in. And I think Minnesota, again, they got to get 3 out of their last 7, and 2 are against the Bears, and 1 is the Titans as well. That's a bold statement, but it would be an epic collapse from Minnesota or Green Bay to not make the playoffs.
It would be, but I'll stake that in there. As for the AFC, I think that we kind of talked about that. That field is almost set in stone. Yeah, it's whether or not like the Colts somehow get themselves
it's the 7
in there
seed.
or something.
Pick
like
yourself
that,
the 7 seed and who wins the North. That's all.
Yeah,
that's all.
Well, midway through, we've definitely been treated to
who's your MVP? Who's your MVP midway through?
Right now, I mean, personally, I'd probably say Josh Allen, to be honest.
I would
because
too.
I think he's, the stat sheet would favor Lamar again. I think,
but Lamar losses to the Raiders, and an ugly loss to Cleveland.
And the only reason that the Bills are 8-2 is because of Josh Allen. Like they are like Derrick Henry has made a claim to be an MVP candidate, earlier this year.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just think the total package. I think Josh Allen's in the front runner for that.
And honestly,
hey, dude, if the Cardinals go off at the end of this year and win the West convincingly, like Kyler's in that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, started it. He started. I said he was. What was it? What did I have the notes there? 22 of 24, 3 total touchdowns, 2 rushing, 1 passing, 266 yards. He's going to put up some numbies down the stretch. If he does, it's good for the Cardinals and it's good for his chances. I will just say, it's to me an absolute travesty and insane if the Detroit Lions don't get recognized with either Coach of the Year or some other sort of award or recognition. I don't know if they'll have an Offensive Player of the Year because it's there's so many guys. I don't know if Goff will win MVP because of the numbers, but someone of Detroit needs to be recognized. What they have done is truly remarkable. They're doing what it took Washington changing owners to do to like right the ship. They have found their Mike Tomlin. They have found their Andy Reid. They have found their Sean Payton. It's like the New Orleans Saints when it was a shitty organization for forever, New Orleans. And then they're just like, oh, no, we found our guy, and he's now just instilled and totally changed the culture. Yep. And I know a lot of people argue that if Ben Johnson leaves, the Lions will fall apart. I don't think so at all. I really don't. Dan Campbell's an offensive guy, and so much of their philosophy is what Dan Campbell wants to do, along with obviously Ben Johnson designing plays and calling them. But you forget he's an offensive guy, and
game recognized game,
and
he's got it.
When I think about the fact that the Detroit Lions are a one-loss team through 10 weeks and absolutely should be favored in the remainder of their games, like that. When do we think in our lifetime we'd be saying that?
I know. It's crazy, and it came fast.
Deep down, as a Bears fan, I hate it, but I'm so happy for Lions fans because I want what they have so badly. I want the culture center. I want an identity. Jim Harbaugh's doing it in LA. LA won 5 games last year. They already won 6 games this year. If you watch the Chargers, don't just watch the highlights. Watch a full Chargers game if you can. I watched the majority of that Chargers win. They have such an identity. It's so much fun to watch. And it's because you have a man in the building who every other human being that walks by him, their butthole clenches when they walk by him. And that's Harbaugh and that's Campbell. And then that includes Mrs. Ford, who runs the Fords. Like that is just, it's clenching. Because that is the person who runs the organization. And the Bears are cowards.
There's just confidence and a know-how, and
the Bears hated Mike Ditka, and they got rid of him because he was an alpha and he was getting too much of the credit. And look at where it got you. The Jets are the same way. Woody Johnson thinks too highly of himself, and he thinks too highly of the players. The fact that the players in the Chicago Bears locker room are calling so many shots is not a good thing. I need a Mike Vrabel, a Bill Belichick. I need my Dan Campbell. I don't even know if I want Ben Johnson and the Wiz Wonder Boys anymore. I want a man who can go in there and just be like, everything runs through this motherfucker because it's working in Detroit. It's working in Denver. It's working in other bad places around the league. You're seeing it. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Yep. No question. All right. Well, we'll be back to our typical slate next week with our Week 11 recap, but happy to get this midseason review.
Packers 55, underway. Bears 7.
There you go.
And the Bears take a 7-0 lead.
Folks.
The Bears take a 7-0 lead, and they lose 55-0 to 7.
That actually sounds about on the nose. So yeah, it's gonna be a rough rest of the season for the Chicago Bears. You're just gonna have to hope.
I don't think I'm gonna be tweeting through the game. Honestly, I don't want
grab a Miller Lite and just try to relax. Just try to enjoy the shit show that is going to be unveiling on a weekly basis now for at least the next 8 to 9 weeks. Oh well, we'll get through it, and so will you. We'll see you back here next week. Peace out, everyone.
This has been a For Frequency's Sake Podcast Network production. For more great content, subscribe to For Frequency's Sake on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter.